Hello, everyone. I'm doing another Facebook Live with Babette the dog. Been enjoying doing these as I've been exploring and sharing with friends. It just seems like another way to connect during the COVID thing, and it's also another way for me to practice a different style of teaching and a novel format for sharing my ideas. So yeah, just continuing to do that and kind of choosing the topics uh, spontaneously. This one is called Exiting the Matrix, and I just wanted to think on what I interpret the Matrix to be and the process by which one gets out of that kind of power grid or dynamic. And I am thinking about the film, and I think everyone sees the concept in the film differently because I think humans are very narcissistic and we're prone to read ourselves into whatever metaphor if it provides a template. So I guess this will just be me doing my version of the same thing. And if you haven't watched one of these before, the dog I have with me is a pug, and so there's breathing the whole way through. That's her. So yeah, I think all of the Matrix films are about power and freedom and about striving to have freedom and whether or not the characters feel like they have power over their decisions, over their lives. So in the first film, of course, the huge revelation is my whole life I've been plugged into this illusion and I thought I was in control of my decisions, and really I wasn't. I was just being like fed this dream state, and then the characters awaken from that and become able to change things in the Matrix. And that's where Neo becomes a hero. He's the one because he has this power to actually determine his future rather than it just be fed to him. And then in the second Matrix, they learn that even that was just a drama that was being played for them. So they weren't free even in that whole kind of arc of the first film. In fact, this entire enterprise is being set up again and again by the machines, so that they can give humans even a meta level illusion of freedom. I don't know if a new person is watching, but I'm talking about the Matrix and how a major theme in all three films really is freedom and power, and the power to make authentic choices in our lives, and how without that we don't have freedom. So I think a lot of people read into these films whatever kind of ism is most dominant in their lives. I was speaking at the beginning about how humans are narcissistic, and so we're keen to see ourselves in whatever mirror is presented us. And most stories serve as a mirror. It's another human being or set of human beings going through something, and so we're going to think that's me. So a lot of people have looked at The Matrix and they think it's about capitalism, for example. And that's a credible theory because Cornel West was involved in and endorsed the movie, and characters make references, and allusions to philosophers who talk about capitalism, and are Marxists. So class struggle is a theme that a lot of people read into the Matrix. I also think you can make the case for it being about race. You can make the case for it being about sexism. You can make the case for it being about any sort of dynamic or any sort of structure where one group of people or class of beings can oppress another. And of course, on the literal level, the film is about machines controlling the human mind. So there's still that hierarchy and that dynamic of oppression. For me, this misses the essence of the point, and this is where I'm reading myself and what I find most authentic into this film, these films. So even in an oppressor oppressed dynamic, neither group truly has power over the other. And that's where, for me, it falls short to say, for example, these films are about the struggle of the black race against the white, or they're about the struggle of the proletariat against the bourgeois, turning it into this kind of dichotomous dynamic. For me, seeing The Matrix in that sort of dualistic way falls short of the whole picture, because even in an oppressed dynamic, the oppressor is still bound to play a role. So if I'm a white supremacist, for example, it's incumbent upon me to prove that the black race is inferior. And I will expend a lot of energy trying to show that that is the case by finding, errant stories of black people behaving in egregious ways, by finding examples of white people whom I believe to have been wronged, and kind of constructing and amplifying this narrative that the white race is superior and constantly being wronged, right? It's going to take a lot of effort, even by me in the role of the oppressor, to uphold that narrative. And the same would be true in the other examples that I brought up. So if we think The Matrix is about capitalism, for me, that fails to hold true, in that the bourgeois class is going to have just as much anxiety about maintaining its wealth as the lower class will have about gaining wealth or about surviving. And you can see there's statistics that bear this out. Depression is rampant among wealthy people, so is drug use. So this sort of dichotomous view of The Matrix as being about one class of people, one group of entities against another, will fall short for me. So if in any relation among groups of people we're going to be bound to behave in certain ways, then that is what I center on as my sort of definition or understanding of The Matrix. Because even in the word The Matrix, we have this idea of relationality. A matrix is a set of intersections among things. It's like a web. And those of us who were unfortunate enough to survive Algebra 2 in high school remember seeing matrices on the board, and how there are these chains of numbers that bear relations. So going back to the dynamics I've talked about, in the oppressor-oppressed dynamic, there's this same form of relation that both groups are trapped in. The oppressor must demonstrate the inferiority of the oppressed and subjugate the oppressed, and the oppressed must strive against the oppressor. And this sort of polarity holds them in a secret relationship, which both may be unaware of, but they're powerless through their mutual need for the other. As the oppressed, I need the oppressor to satisfy my narrative. There needs to be something to struggle against. And as the oppressor too, I need the oppressed to kind of round out my worldview. You can see the truth of this in cases where a revolution succeeds and people don't know what to do. And so soon enough, there will be kind of a regression to old behaviors. The Who song, Won't Get Fooled Again, is about this. It's about how, in the end, the rebels always become the new oppressor. And so this to me is the essence of what The Matrix is. And I'm not really saying that this is what those films are about. I've said a few times, this is more like my interpretation of these films or how they help me to understand life. So, as an individual in a dynamic with other individuals, in a matrix with other individuals, I have a narrative which leads me to try to conquer or best them or define myself in relation to them in some way. Thus, merely by my individuality, I'm lacking the power of authentic choice. And for me, just to reiterate for people who are showing up again, I think all the Matrix films are about freedom and choice. And how if I don't have authentic choice, then I can't say I'm free. So having an individual identity in a matrix of other identities, needing to compete, needing to define myself against them, this is the essence of choicelessness. It's my future already being laid out in front of me by virtue of the conditioned life I was born into. So, if I was born into a poor family that has great aspirations economically, then I need to make a lot of money from my career. And that's sort of a foretold conclusion. There's going to be so much pressure on me that it might be unfair to say I really have a choice, or I might not perceive myself to have one. And the same is going to be true in any situation. There's going to be this sort of cloak or shadow over the life that tells me, because I am this kind of person, there are certain things I must do. There are certain futures that are prescribed for me. And again, this is what the Matrix is. It's like, by virtue of my birth, which I did not choose, I must have a certain kind of life. And every choice just falls into place, and the life becomes a prison. And so, just to kind of summarize what I've said so far, and by the way, I've never done a long one of these before, but you have to like switch which hand you're holding the phone in every so often because it gets heavy. Or at least I do. Maybe I should do more push-ups. But having an individual identity in a matrix of other individuals is going to pit me against them in a way that kind of circumscribes my narrative. And in fact, it will create my narrative. It will create a beginning, middle, and end. And my life just becomes kind of eking that out without a sensation of choice. So I titled this talk Exiting the Matrix, and I should speak a bit about how we get out of that. In the films, and I said this toward the beginning, Neo learns that there's this world outside of the Matrix, and then he becomes able to hack back into it and change things within the Matrix. Later, he learns that even that was engineered by the machines to give humans the illusion of choice. And so there's sort of this meta level at which he's not pulling the strings of his own life. The humans are being manipulated. But I think this dynamic of being awoken from the Matrix and then tapping back into it really kind of spells the way to freedom. It tells us what true freedom is. So there's this sensation or this dynamic of something outside the prescribed existence, then making choices within that existence, then dictating the terms by which the world is playing itself out, right? Neo becomes able to write code in the Matrix. Similarly, in our lives, even when there's a bracket around choice, there's a question, do I really have choice? Or am I just a body, a circuitry kind of meeting itself out according to predetermined rules? There's a sensation of something observing those choices as they occur, something beyond that domain. It's not the mind. If we try to work out choices in our mind alone, we'll find that we're not purely able. I'll always be able to conjure equivalent reasons for why I should do any two binary things, you know? Oh, I should go uh, to this college because, you know, it's got better statistics and I'm going to get a better job afterward. And I should go to that college because it's going to be more fun and my friend is going there. And I'm going to be able to dredge up, you know, a register of reasons that the mind alone cannot differentiate between. And so I'm really hiding from the fact that on a deeper level of existence, showing new people the dog. On a deeper level of existence, the choice has already always been made. And that's the level of the heart. It's the part of me that knows which school I want to go to without a reason or any parallel choice. And then there's an even deeper level in that, which is what is it that gave my heart its set of values that seem to be preordained? Why do I want love and community over anger and division? Why is that intrinsic to me? Why do I want experiences of beauty over experiences of decay? These values are inherent to me. And this is where we get into spirituality or the level of the soul. It's like, even if in my life I don't experience a true capacity to choose, even if my life is just a sort of wind-up toy spinning itself along, there is, on faith, on sensation, on intuition, something that is choosing to be here, or has chosen to be here, has given me the values that I have that steer my life. And we can get even to deeper levels than that. If we interrogate our own soul, our own basemost sense of observing our experience, we'll realize that it's the same thing, regardless of whether I'm this individual identity or any other. Because the soul doesn't have quality. You know, if I say I've got a masculine soul versus a feminine soul, that doesn't mean anything. That's not the soul. That's my physical body or my gender construct, which was conditioned by society. The soul is at the level beyond conditioning. And so it has to be this thing without quality, this absence of quality, this ephemerality. It's at that level that real freedom exists because nothing can possibly affect it. It simply is. And since that's the level of experience or agency that is choosing for me to be here at all and have values that steer and direct my life, the truth is that I never was in the matrix. It was an illusion that I was bound up in the matrix the entire time. Which, of course, is what at least the first film gets across too. You know, Neo's entire life was a dream. His body was outside, hooked up to this machine. Then he gets to choose to come back and change things within the matrix and lead a more empowered life there. And that's the choice we have too, once we get into heart-based modalities and spirituality, differing value systems like that. We realize I, as a soul, or as a set of values deriving from a soul, can come into the world and make choices there and play around and vie in struggles and conquer them and win. I can do all sorts of things. I can delineate all sorts of stories in this world. But what I am fundamentally is not of this world. It is outside. And so the paradox, and I come back to this again and again, and this is, I suppose, the essence of what I wanted to communicate in this, is the way out of the matrix is realizing we were never there. That self bound up in the struggle was a false self. And just to reiterate, we can then return to the matrix and play within the matrix if we so choose. But at that point, it is a choice. And that's the difference. So, just another Facebook Live experiment from Jackson Buckley. Love to everyone, and I hope you have a really nice night. Bye bye.